Well, on Inauguration Day, the U.S. president did have this to say about America's relationship with Muslims around the globe.
To the Muslim world, we seek a new way forward based on mutual interest and mutual respect. To those leaders around the globe who seek to sow conflict or blame their society's ills on the West, know that your people will judge you on what you can build, not what you destroy. To those who cling to power through corruption and deceit and the silencing of dissent, know that you are on the wrong side of history, but that we will extend a hand if you are willing to unclench your fist.
Now, Barack Obama's visit to Ankara is a first opportunity for the new U.S. government to engage with the Muslim world. Although he's not expected to make the keynote speech, he's promised to give in the first 100 days of his term on the issue. Well, we are joined by Bülent Alireza, an expert on Turkish foreign policy. He is in Washington, D.C. We're also joined by Ahmed Bedier, a host of a Muslim American radio talk show in Tampa, Florida. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I want to begin by asking you, the U.S. president has been saying America needs to listen when it comes to the Muslim world. What is it that Muslims in Turkey are saying, and what is it that they want to hear? Let me start with you, Mr. Bülent Alireza.
Well, Turkey is both a European country. It is an aspirant for EU accession. It is a member of NATO. But at the same time, as you say, it is a Muslim country in the sense that 99% of its population are Muslim. They were opposed to the war in Iraq. They've been very angered by what happened in Guantanamo and other practices of the Bush administration. And look at Barack Hussein Obama, and the Prime Minister always stresses his middle name to show that he is not a total stranger to the Islamic world, as the hope for a new page and a better relationship with the U.S. So they're looking for a new style. He starts with the advantage of not being Bush, and hopefully the speech will add to the earlier messages he gave to the Islamic world and usher in a better era.
Maybe I can follow up with you then, Mr. Ahmed Bedier. I mean, how damaged is the relationship between the United States and the Muslim world as a whole?
I mean, it's horrific. It's worst time ever. Obama and the new administration is going to have to work so hard to undo the damage of the past 8 years of the Bush administration and the horrific damage that they created. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's not just going to be speeches and rhetoric. The Muslim world is also looking for action. And when he's talking about a new way forward based on mutual interest and mutual respect, they're looking for changes in the foreign policy, not just speeches about changes, but actual changes. And I think primarily they're looking for the president to start using diplomacy as the primary weapon to resolve conflicts in the Middle East and to end the wars in Afghanistan and in Iraq. I mean, he's made a commitment to try to end the war in Iraq, but talking about shifting troops to Afghanistan and Pakistan, that's also worrisome to the Muslim world. So they're expecting him to keep his promises that he ran on during the campaign and to have actionable things to point at, including being an honest broker in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I mean, while things like closing Guantanamo and giving interviews to Arab media outlets does fix things a little bit, but they're really looking for solid things like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and are really disappointed in his inaction when the Gaza crisis happened.
Mr. Alireza, do you agree with your colleague there? Do you think that when the Turkish people are listening to him address the parliament, that they are looking for more than just rhetoric? I mean, how much can Barack Obama accomplish with the fact that there are these sort of major issues that are still ongoing, including the two wars?
Well, let's be fair to him. This is the second bilateral visit that he's made after Canada. He's been to multilateral events in London, Strasbourg, and Prague, but he's chosen to come to Turkey for his second visit. The demonstrations that you showed in the clip we watched just before we started, very few people turned up for those demonstrations. Imagine if it was George Bush who was coming there. So the Turks are cutting him some slack. They may be unhappy about his escalation of the conflict in Afghanistan, but initially Turkey backed the war in Afghanistan, whereas it totally opposed the war in Iraq. Now, obviously, actions are important, but I think there's some time before they get disappointed with Barack Hussein Obama.
Let me follow up with that then, Mr. Ali Reza. I mean, what role can Turkey play in terms of providing a bridge between the two cultures?
Well, two cultures, but also two worlds, and particularly when it comes to diplomacy. The Turks are very unhappy with the Bush approach towards Iran. They counseled the resumption of the dialogue with Syria and the initiation of the dialogue with Iran, and the Bush administration was unwilling to do that. Now, the Obama administration seems interested in a better relationship with Damascus and perhaps down the road even with Tehran. That's the kind of area where the Turks can be helpful. Where there is a problem is with respect to the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. The Turks, and in particular the Turkish Prime Minister, has been pushing for the inclusion of Hamas in the process, and unfortunately for the Turks, the Obama administration seems intent on following the Bush policy on this and excluding Hamas from any kind of dialogue.
Mr. Bedier, do you agree with your colleague? Is that a concern for you, that there does seem to be some pattern of following the previous administration? And if so, what specific action does this president need in order to win over the Muslim world?
I mean, during the campaign, Obama talked how horrible things were, and they're going to establish a completely different way forward. So he has to not only disconnect from the previous administration by words, but also by action.
Have you seen those actions so far, though?
Well, of course. I mean, no, like, you know, there's been a lot, and to all fairness, he's only been in power for a couple of months, so time will tell. But we've seen some of that action, but ultimately, it's going to have to come down to things like the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, where there's some tough decisions that need to be made, and he needs to take a stand. And when talking about dialogue and diplomacy, you don't just talk to your enemies, as he said. You don't talk to just your friends. You have to talk to your enemies. That's who you make peace with. And I think in pointing to Turkey, one of the examples that he could point to is how Turkey is able to balance their Islamic heritage with democracy. And I think while it may not be perfect, but by far it's far better than most other parts of the Muslim world where they balance democracy and their Islamic heritage. And I think that's one of the things that he needs to promote consistently, and not have this double standard that has been applied in the past, where in some areas they're pushing for democracy, or the administration is pushing for democracy, but in other areas they tolerate tyranny and dictatorship.
Mr. Bedier, you pointed out the war in Gaza, where Barack Obama has been heavily criticized for his silence on that. If I can get a final word on you from that.
I mean, 412 children were killed in Gaza because of this offensive, over 1,400 people killed, and Obama did very little to speak out against it. It hurt him, while he's still very much liked in the Muslim world, but that hurt his image, and people just felt like it's going to be more of the same. That's why I'm saying that he needs to change that, and hopefully with the appointment of George Mitchell and others, that they can have real pressure. And I think one of the things that the Middle East and the Muslim world is looking for is for the new president to take a tough stand and apply pressure, equal pressure on the Israelis, just like the Palestinians, to make peace happen.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, gentlemen. I know you both will be watching what he does in Turkey with interest, as will we. Bülent Ali Reza and Ahmed Bedier, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the U.S. president will be watched closely, as we've pointed out, to see if he comments on the issue of Armenian genocide during his Turkish visit. During the election campaign, Barack Obama described the deaths as, quote, a widely documented fact supported by an overwhelming body of historical evidence.